Hello and welcome to another episode of the Outdoor Gibbon podcast. Only a few days to Christmas. Hopefully everybody's ready for it. You've all got your Christmas wish lists and you're all expecting to get something nice from Santa Claus. I'm sure there's a few people out there that have put down new rifles, thermals, binoculars, at least something for hunting. So let's hope you do get all of those, or maybe you've treated yourself. Been a busy few weeks since we recorded the last podcast. Had a friend of mine, an old school friend of mine, up over the last few days, and we've been out culling some roe and doing some deer counts at the same time. A lot, and I mean a lot of roe going about. So it's going to be a busy few weeks as soon as Christmas is out the way. But that'll be plenty of tasty venison to go into the food chain. I think the last recording I was suffering with something. Well, I'm not quite over it. The cough is still lingering about, but life goes on, and we're on our way, getting festive preparations already sorted, deciding what to have for Christmas dinner and setting the menu up. But this recording we've done here is if you are looking for something to watch over the festive period. I strongly recommend going to Netflix if you have it and watching a show called Outlast. It's a survival show, but a survival show that's slightly different. You have to work as a team to get to the end and survive. You only go in with the items you're given. Well, I interview one of the team members, not one of the winning team members, but one of the team members. And yeah, it's interesting to hear this story. There will also be a slightly new format to the way these intros and during the podcast run. Obviously, we now have a sponsor, so we will have a short clip from our sponsor, because with their help we will be able to produce more shows and more content for you. So just before we listen to Tina tell her story of the show, let's just have a word from our sponsors. The Outdoor Gibbon podcast is proudly sponsored by the Shooting and Hunting Academy, an online training platform and UK registered learning provider that provides a host of accredited and nationally available courses and masterclasses delivered by leading industry experts. Hello and welcome to the Outdoor Gibbon podcast. Today I am joined by a lady called Tina. Now, she is an adventure junkie, she likes to call herself, loves the outdoors, all sorts of things like that. And if you have watched the recent Netflix show called Outlast, you will have seen that she was on one of the teams on there. How you doing, Tina?
I'm good. Thank you. Thank you for having me. This is amazing.
No,
How are you?
fantastic. I'm good. Yeah, we've got a bit of a time difference. I think you're over in California, am I right?
I am. Yep. It is currently about 11 o'clock a.m. here.
So 11 for you, and it's about 7 p.m. for me. But hey, we've managed to tie the times together. I think when we first tried to arrange this, I think you must have been out in Hawaii or something like that, because it was some crazy 15-hour time difference, and I was like, that's going to be a killer if I've got to make a recording at that sort of time difference.
Yeah, it was nuts. I remember we were chatting and I'm like, oh, it's like, I don't know, 7 or 8 a.m. Like, oh, it's like 10 or 11 p.m. here. And I'm like, what? Oh my gosh. I'm so sorry for bothering you so late at night.
No, no, not at all. So um, basically, let's have a bit of a chat. So you have a social media presence, and on there I wouldn't think of yourself as the type of person that would have gone on an adventure survival type of show, because I think your day job, you're a model, aren't you?
I am. Yep. I've been modeling for almost 20 years. And that was like the cool thing about the whole experience and applying for the show because I'm like, you know what? People are going to take one look at me and be like, oh, this girl's going to be great TV. She's going to do so miserable. But even when I'm out in shoots and there's small talk about, oh, what do you like to do when you're not on set? Oh, I throw a 30-40 pound pack on my back and I go schlep around in the mountains for weeks on end. And they're like, you're joking, right? And I'm like, no, this is who I am. Like the whole makeup thing is just a facade and it's just crazy. And it makes it really interesting because, yeah, the going through the casting process, they're all like, okay, you're really interesting. All right, let's see what you do.
Yeah, no, that's it exactly. You're not the stereotypical type of, well, if anybody, everybody needs to go and watch the show. Let's call it that. It's season
Mm.
two of Outlast, which is basically like a survival show where you have to join teams and basically stay to the end. And this season was really good. It was a completely different thing to season one, which yeah, I think season one was just a bit wild, to be honest. They so if you're going to watch something, go and watch this. But yeah, it was really interesting because why did you decide to go and first of all go on this show?
I did it for many reasons, but it's funny, my husband and I, we love survival shows. Alone is like the goat of all survival shows. And I know for me, like I'm not skilled enough to do that. I'm not even gonna put myself in the caliber of people that apply and do that show. But we were watching the first season of Outlast and we binged it over like 2 days. We got super hooked. And I looked at him on the couch when we finished the last episode and I'm like, I could totally do this. And at first I don't think that he took me serious. He was just kind of like, yeah, yeah, sure. And I'm like, no, like, I think I could literally do this. And I obsessed for weeks, even months, trying to find the application, reached out to a bunch of people that I knew in like casting and production, and finally got a hit on the application. But for me, I think the reason why I wanted to do it is one, I was confident in my abilities, but I really wanted to go into it to break that stereotype of being a model and just representing women in general because there's been so many times throughout my career in modeling where people are shocked when I talk about my outdoor love and the skills that I have and that I would much rather go and sit in a mountaintop in the middle of nowhere like hundreds of miles away from people and dig cat holes to use the bathroom than sit in a makeup chair for hours on end or get a pedicure and a manicure. And so I really wanted to break that barrier, and also just to prove to the world too, because outdoor sports is, a male dominated field. And I
Yep.
really wanted to bring light that there are women of all walks of life that do enjoy the outdoors just as much as men and can excel in the outdoors just as well as men too. Um, and so that was a big draw for me. I also, money is a big factor for people. So you see that there's $1 million prize at the end, and for me, I'm my mom's caretaker because she has dementia, and I made her promise years ago that I would keep her at home as long as I could, and that gets expensive.
Yeah,
Right now, she
100%.
think yeah, and right now things are great, things are manageable, but I know there is going to come a point where that care is going to exceed my ability, and I'm going to have to hire somebody from the outside. And so that was a huge thing. Well, wow, if I can go out and do this, I won't have to worry about that. Um, and then also an ode to my father. He was an outdoor survivalist. I learned a lot of my skills from him. Unfortunately, he passed away unexpectedly in 2013, and so I never really got to do a grandiose adventure with him. So it was kind of my way of immortalizing him too. Like, look, Dad, this is I have a lot to thank you for me being here. Um, and then also to show my daughter, because we've been through a lot of struggles, that no matter how hard things get, just keep pushing on, just keep going forward. So there was like a whole basket full of little tidbits and goodies as to why I wanted to do the show. And I just think that it was very, very, I don't want to call it serendipitous, but the stars definitely aligned, for the opportunity to present itself. And it was just, and in a sense, I guess I kind of manifested the whole thing because I went from watching the show, loving the show, obsessing to finding the application, to filling out the application, to going through the casting process and getting on the show. I don't think I really had any doubt. And it's crazy because there's a lot of times where, I'm like, I don't know if I'm going to do this. I don't know if they're going to pick me because being in the business for so long, being a model, you get rejected all the time.
Yeah, yeah.
And to have everything just be like, ding, 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 all the check boxes marked, it was insane. It was really, really crazy.
That is crazy because you mention Alone, which is obviously I've been what my wife and I have sat and binge watched the whole lot, and we watched the British version because they did a UK version, and it was like that's quite disappointing. The UK guys didn't really last very long, and then we watched the US version, and it's like 100 days. This guy's like built a cabin and he's like living out there and surviving. It's just absolutely phenomenal. And as you
Yeah.
say, Outlast, we were just sat there going, why aren't they making their shelters better? If they did that, they could last longer. But realistically, you're playing the waiting game, aren't you? I suppose in Outlast,
Yes.
was it about 30 days, I think, that you stayed out, or
Yes.
yeah.
Mhm. It was
Is
just
there a,
under
is
a
there
month.
a, is
Yeah.
there a set time limit that you are only going to do like 30 days in the wilderness, or is it something that could run on for longer?
It is something that could go on for longer. We were told that they were permitted for longer than we were out there. It
Okay.
just the game didn't play out that way. So it isn't a set specific days. I know there's other shows like Naked and Afraid where I think their days are like 21. So they have like a very target date to get to. For ours,
Yep.
it's we have this little gap of time. Let's see how long you guys go. So that was kind of cool. But for us, yeah, we definitely played the long game. We set up our shelter, and we kept adding to it as the weeks or the days and the weeks went on. Um, but we're just like, well, we don't really need to expend our energy that much to make some kind of elaborate cabin because we don't know how long it's going to go. So we just set up we thought was going to be sufficient and just ran with it.
I was going to say what watching through, and there was definitely Team Delta seemed to have everything about it. The team just worked, and yeah, you had your issues and people had their little arguments, but I think you all settled into that. But it was a strong team. People stuck with their um sort of their resolve, and it worked. It just seemed to do what it was supposed to do. And give it to the other team across the water. Yeah, you could see at the end they realized that the two Texan boys realized that it was, yeah, this is a good chance of getting going home with some money. But realistically,
Mhm.
they probably would have had all four if things hadn't spun around the way they were. Everybody was going to get ill at some point if you just drank raw water or didn't eat enough,
Mhm.
really.
Yep. Yeah. It was tough. I think we probably averaged about 1, maybe 200 calories a day. There were days where maybe we had a little bit more than that, but yeah, the longer you're out there, your body is essentially dying. You're, starving yourself. You're expending a lot of energy. You're not resting right. You're not hydrating properly. Um, and the risk of getting ill, I mean, even a simple cut could infect you and take you out of the game. Or not cooking food properly and eating something that maybe had a parasite or was too raw, or there's a lot of variables out there that could just knock you out.
Yeah, so before you actually, obviously you apply for this. My wife did my application for a loan but ruined it, and I don't think I got on. So there we go. I'm not
Oh
going
no.
to not going to season two. Being dyslexic, she filled it in, but she didn't pay. She was like, I just filled it in, but I really should have done it better for you. Um, but do they give you any prior training before they just sort of dump you in the wilderness, or is that it? You've got what you've got, kind of thing.
Pretty much you have what you have. Like I'd mentioned earlier, the casting process is pretty long and vigorous. It was, I think, like 3 months from start to
Okay.
finish. And then when we got the official green light, we only had 3 weeks. So you had three
Wow.
weeks to get the proper gear that you needed. I had a lot of it because I spent a lot of times in the Sierra Nevadas.
Yep.
But there were certain things that, yes, I may have had the cold weather gear, but I didn't have anything because where we were at, it's a temperate rainforest. It's the world's largest temperate rainforest, southeastern Alaska. And so I didn't have a lot of stuff that was waterproof. So that was my big thing, like finding the proper boots and the rain gear. Um, and then also for me, because I'm such a smaller person, because of what I do, I really had to pack on the weight, which became a massive challenge at first. Because for almost 20 years, been on, I don't want to say like a very strict diet, but I would like to say that I lean towards the healthier eating habits and I'm very active in the gym and I'm a runner and all that. And I'm like, well, damn, I have to gain weight if I want to sustain myself out there.
I
And
was
at
going to say
first,
that. Yeah, that's going to be one of those crazy things, especially the industry you're in. Everybody's
yes.
looking at you as, oh, you have to be a certain shape, figure, all the rest of it. And all of a sudden you're like, hang on
Mhm.
a minute, I'm going on a show and I need to actually pack on the calories and not be,
Yes.
nothing's going to fit me for a while, kind of thing.
Yeah, oh gosh, and when things were starting to look pretty promising through the casting process before I got the official green light, my husband was like, "You should just start. It's looking good. You should just start packing it on now. You should just start packing it on now." And for me, I'm like, "But what on that slim chance that I get passed over, and then I'm stuck with like an extra 10, 15 pounds that I can't get off, and then I'm really screwing myself." So I started a little bit, but then after I got the official word, and at first I was like, "Oh, this is gonna be fun. I can eat whatever I want to. I don't have to feel guilty about anything." And that was great for about the first 3 days. And then my body was like, "Wait a minute. What are you doing?" And it just started rejecting everything. I was getting so sick. It was really difficult. And then in my mindset, because I'm a very active person, I stopped going to the gym. I stopped my endurance training because in my mind, I was like, why do I want to burn off all of that extra calories that I'm really struggling to try to pack on to the first place? Which I think towards the end was kind of my Achilles heel because I definitely burnt out. And I think if I would have had that extra muscle mass, maybe the fatigue wouldn't have hit in as bad as it did. Um, but that was a struggle to 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 get all the weight. I think that was honestly the hardest thing for me was to gain the weight to prepare because the skills and stuff were there. I mean, I did brush up on some things, refresh my mind about making gill nets, which we weren't allowed to use, which was a
I was going to
bummer.
say it's a real pain because
Yeah.
you see the guys in alone, and that's all they do. They build the gill net, they go out, and it's like, but why can't they go fishing? Why can't they do this? Why? Why? Because they gave you a fishing net technically around your pallet, didn't they?
They did, and that's some of the comments from social media that have been flooding in, like, "Oh, these guys don't know what they're doing, like, they had a net right there, and they didn't utilize it, like, how dumb can they be?" And from the average viewer, yeah, people would think that, but there were so many hunting and fishing regulations per the state of Alaska in that region that we just weren't allowed to do,
I
and
was
gill
going to
netting is
say
primitive
you were still,
hunts.
yeah, you were still regulated by the hunting and fishing legislation. So it was like, because I think in one of the scenes, obviously the boys see a bear walk past them, and you're like, well, that's dinner. But it's obviously
Mhm.
they don't have a tag for it, therefore you can't hunt it.
Yes, absolutely. And we had an instance where Brendan from our team went hunting, and he literally was in. He said I could have poked it in the butt with my arrow. He was that close because he was just hiding in the bush waiting for deer to walk by. And even though was legal at the time
Right.
for harvesting, production was like, we're not going to grant you guys those tags, which I understand because it's a liability. I mean, you have to be a pretty good damn shot to hit a bear and take one down with this tiny little bow and arrows. I
Well,
mean,
I've got currently got a friend. Well, we record this. They've just finished. They've been out in Colorado for 19 days. They're stalkers from over in Scotland, and that's one of her tags was for a bear. And she said, I think she connected with a bear, but it disappeared off into some rocky caves, and they haven't been able to find it. But I'm just like,
no.
she's a little lass, and she's fantastic with a bow. And yeah, literally, I'm just like, surely the bear was scary. She goes, no, I was more scared of the guy with the rifle that was trying to shoot the same bear as me than the bear. And I'm just like,
Um,
okay, that's fair enough. So yeah,
that
pretty
is,
impressive,
yeah.
really. But
Hmm.
so you had obviously small game permits because you picked a
Yes,
porcupine. I think Brendan got a porcupine, didn't he?
he did. Yeah, and he was tracking that for about a week.
Oh
I
right,
know where
okay.
it is. Yeah, and he was in the process of making a snare for it, but he was a little concerned because he's a trapper by trade. That's what he does.
Yes. Yeah, yeah.
And the snare wire that we were given was a little on the thinner side, and so he's like, I don't know. I would prefer to have a bigger gauged wire, but we'll see how it goes." And as he was over there setting up the snare, he saw it starting to walk up the tree. He's like, "Oh, this is perfect."
Yeah, because I don't think he's not a bow hunter, is he? I think that was his first kind of go with a bow, really, wasn't it?
I think he's done stuff before, but that's primarily, yeah, not what he hunts with for sure.
It's one of those things you'd really like to be able to see all the behind the scenes footage because the
Yes.
cut you put on for the TV is great, but it's like, so what did they do? What were they doing for all those hours sat in the tent and or sat in their camps talking about stuff? There must be good stuff going on and things happening.
Oh, there's so much, and I do not envy the editor's job at all. I mean, you figure you have 16 people. We're out there for almost a month. We're mic'd 24 hours. And then we have the crew come in every morning and they leave at night before the tide goes back out. But then they have GoPros and night cameras all set up around the camp. So you're constantly being monitored. So all of those hours of footage that they have to chop down to 8 45-minute episodes. I mean, it's got to be grueling, but man, there were so many moments, even I for just for Team Delta, that I wish would have made what everybody saw because it was just great. I mean, we were popping squirrels left and right. We were on like this peninsula, and we didn't really see any big game on our side. Bravo across the pond, they did have a lot of wolf encounters, and more bear
Okay.
encounters than we had. We heard the wolves howling every night, which is pretty cool, but they never made their way on our side. We saw a lot of moose signs as well, but never saw a moose. But we had a lot of squirrels, and it was really funny because when we first got there, you would hear them chirp all the time to the point where it would get very annoying. 'Cause like, but it was like almost daily. We were getting 1, 2. I think one day we got 4 or 5 squirrels. Um, Either bow. I think Brendan did get 1 squirrel with the snare, but the rest of them were bows between Brendan and Eric. But towards the end, it was very, very quiet
I
around
was going
camp
to say,
because
yeah, you
they were just
thin the squirrel population down in that area, then definitely.
we did.
But it's always funny though. Again, the edit shows you that it looks as though you're always struggling for food. But you've just said you were feeding on squirrels, obviously, but it's still not the right number of calories. There's less carbohydrates and things like that,
Yeah.
which is always difficult. I'm assuming.
Yeah, and then as our team grew, that's another mouth to feed. And
Yep.
so you had 4 and then 5 people that you had to share your rations with. And we were clamming every day too because we were surrounded by bays, so we're eating a lot of clams. Um, but yeah, with the carbohydrates, I mean, you hardly got that. I don't think there's very many in mushrooms or seaweed, maybe a little more than the proteins, obviously. Um, but our meals were primarily squirrel and clams, and we'd boil the bull kelp because it's high in protein as well. We did get shrimp pots towards the end, so we were feasting on shrimp, but feasting meaning we each got 4 or 5 little shrimps if we were lucky.
I was going to
Was
say
not
you did have it.
farming.
You had a chef on the team, so you should have actually had gourmet meals at some point.
We did. Well, it's funny because in the beginning, and I became like his little sidekick slash assistant. And in the beginning, we were making these like elaborate for outdoors sake meals where we would boil the clams and then we had the squirrel and then I was slicing up the bull kelp to make little noodles and we made like spaghetti with squirrel. I mean, it was just insane. And unfortunately nobody gets to see that. And Eric made sea salt. But after about 3 or 4 days of spending the time to like prep these meals per se, we're all just kind of like, just throw it in the pot, just throw it
Just
in the
eat
pot.
it. We
We're
just need to
hungry.
eat. Yeah, yeah.
It doesn't need to be presentable, it's just eat it.
No, and again, because you guys had to walk a fair distance to get water as well, didn't you? To obviously get water that you could boil and then have drinking water.
Yes, we found a couple of different sources. I had found one, and then the guys had found another that the world saw. Um, and it was a hike. It was probably about anywhere from like half a mile to maybe a mile out, which is pretty far when you're walking
Y-
with no calories.
Yeah, I was going to say
We
when
did.
you yeah low on energy, that's a long walk.
Yes, and you always had to cross over the bay too, so it's muddy and marshy and sandy, which isn't really easy to path over pass over either. Um, but we did make a rain catch from the first shelter because we did build onto it, but the first one with the tarp, we did roll a couple of logs at the bottom and made kind of like a trough. And so we had a nice little dash of water there too, and that lasted us for about 10 days. And then we
Okay.
had a couple of dry spells, which you would think, okay, we're in a rainforest, it's going to rain every day. And crazy enough, we went about 4 or 5 straight days where it didn't rain, which was nice on the comfortable side of it because you're not constantly sitting in damp weather. But on the other hand, it's like we know we have to walk far for water. And now we're going to have to walk far for water because we didn't have a lot of vessels to carry that water back to camp. So it was almost a daily hike to go and get water for that probably 5-day period.
I was going to say, because this must have all happened around about sort of autumn or fall, as you'd call it over there, because they seem to like to do this with these shows. They put you in just at the cusp of as it's going to turn cold and the nights are going to get darker and the potential of snow and ice and all the rest of it, just to add to the jeopardy.
Oh, absolutely. They're like, what's the wettest, most comfortable time of the year in Alaska? Oh yeah, the fall, right before winter hits. Let's do that and see how they do.
So obviously, with that time of year and being on a bay, were you plagued by like mosquitoes and midges and biting bugs and all the rest of it?
Surprisingly, no. I have never been to that area before, so I wasn't familiar with the insect population, but we didn't have any issues with any kind of flying insects. I think the only ones that I personally saw were a couple of daddy longlegs walking around inside the shelter, but there weren't any beetles, there weren't any mosquitoes, there weren't any midges, there weren't anything, which was very nice.
I was going to say it
Very,
could have been
very
a
nice.
whole different experience with like swarms of mosquitoes, and it's just like every night you're just hiding by the smoke of the fire, going, I don't want to
Oh,
be eaten alive.
oh, absolutely, and there's been plenty of times where I've been on the trail, and, like, my bug net's just not even doing it because 'cause they're just everywhere, and it can really break you down mentally too
Yeah,
because
yeah.
it's such an annoyance, and it's a distraction from what you're doing. So I'm very grateful that
Oh
they
no,
were
that's
non-existent.
cool. That really is cool. So obviously, have you kept in touch with most of the team, or is it sort of one of those things that because you had the emotional conversation at the end and the way it was all edited that you'll be friends for life, but is that something you're still in contact with everybody?
Absolutely. We talk almost every day. Brendan called me, I think 2 days ago, and we chatted for about 45 minutes.
Cool.
And the other guys, we have a group chat on Instagram going. So if we don't personally call one another, we're on every day chatting it up, like, hey,
Fantastic.
how you guys doing? And we're already talking about trying to get together at some point. If not, the end of this year, maybe springtime, we're all going to get together and hang out.
That's really cool because obviously it's one of those things. I suppose you've spent best part of 30 days literally knowing that person because there's nothing that you're doing and they're doing that you're not sharing that experience with. So it's like baptism of fire for getting to know people, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And it's a beautiful thing because what worked so well with us is how we got along together. And the funny thing is, like, if we would have passed each other on the street, we probably wouldn't have given any of us the time of day because we're that completely different. We come from all different walks of life.
Yeah.
And it's an amazing life lesson that if you really get to know somebody at the heart, you'll be surprised at how much you have in common. Like, never judge a book by its cover. And like I said, it was just beautiful. We started calling ourselves the Misfits for a while because we were just like this ragtag bunch of people all thrown together, and we became this dysfunctional family over a month, but it was amazing.
But it's when you see because obviously the way the show talks about it at the beginning is you've all come together and none of you have actually had a chance to talk to each other. They just throw you on a boat and dump you
Mhm.
out on a beach. Is
Yep.
that I'm assuming, yeah, obviously with the way it's cast and all the rest of it, you hadn't actually bumped into or met any of these people before?
No, production was very, very strict and very good about keeping us apart. When we flew in, we had about a week and a half before the show actually started.
The Outdoor Gibbon podcast is proudly sponsored by the Shooting and Hunting Academy. Through the Academy, shooters, hunters, and those involved in the use of firearms can gain an in-depth and unique level of training that enables them to shoot better, behave more effectively in the field, up their strike rates, as well as learning new skills. Crucially, those new to deer stalking, the Academy also offers the Proficient Deer Stalker Certificate Level 1, the PDS-1, a deer management certificate that is nationally recognised and accredited both by LANTRA and UK Rural Skills. Visit the Shooting and Hunting Academy to find out more. Let's get back to the show.
But yeah, so they flew us out there and they kept us for about a week and a half, and it was like a jail sentence. I mean, you were stuck in your room, not allowed to go anywhere because they didn't want that interaction. They wanted to have that element of, yeah, these people literally have never met before. They don't know who each other are. And so when we got out there, even on the boat ride where they transported us from the town we were staying at to the location. It was about a 45-minute to an hour boat ride through the bays to get to where they dropped us off. They were constantly saying, "No talking, no talking." I mean, you felt like you were a little child in the classroom trying to say a word. They're like, "No, no," like slapping you on the wrist, like, "Keep it shut." And so it was crazy. And then
So it really
during
was down to just sort of eyeing people up, going, "Well, that person, oh look, they've got the right gear. They might know what's going on." Yeah, yeah.
and that's exactly what you did, and it was really hilarious when we were on the boat and everybody was sizing everybody up, and I definitely too was judging people based on their gear, and Joseph, and I think everybody was kind of picking on him internally because he chose frog togs for his rain gear, which, not to bash the company, I've had experiences with them as well. They were actually my first go-to because they're affordable. You think that's good. And I hiked the John Muir Trail in them and got soaked through completely in a monsoon. And I'm like, this this guy's wearing this gear. Clearly, he doesn't know that it's kind of like the lower level stuff and it's not going to keep him dry. And he doesn't know what he's doing. And he wore those things till the very end. They were ripped, torn. They looked like chaps, but he made it work. But it was really
Hey,
funny.
exactly, because you had other guys there that like full curry hunting suits and all the rest of it, and you're just like, yeah, yeah. You can see how everybody gets a different idea because there were people. Did anybody actually have like lace-up boots? Were you all in sort of wet weather wellies and stuff like that?
Sammy did have mountaineering boots, very
Okay,
similar. I had a pair as well. I had a pair of Kennetreks that I like to wear, and I debated wearing them because for me in the rocky terrain, it's better for me to move around,
yeah,
and they're tighter on your feet, and they're semi-waterproof. But the more I thought about it, I'm like, I should probably do the muck boots just because of the muskegs and all of the water. And the moment you step in a puddle, I mean, you're done and you want to keep your feet warm. And so I went back and forth for a while, probably a good like 10 days before I left, trying to figure out which ones I wanted to take. And then I like, you know what, I should probably just take the mud boots. And I'm glad that I did because when we got the on the first drop when we all got dropped off on the beach. It's very rocky, so the boat can only go far up to the shoreline without beaching itself. And when you stepped off the boat, it was literally almost to your knee. And I saw Sammy step off, and I'm like, he's already on day one. He's got water in his boots. I'm so glad that I didn't wear those other boots. Um, so I think he was the only one that wore the lace ups. Everybody else went with
yeah,
the
yeah.
rubber boots. Mhm.
Yeah, because it's always interesting to work that out. It's like, do they give you a kit list, or is that just sort of something they go, this is where did they tell you? I'm assuming they kind of tell you where you're going, so at least you've got some idea to build a kit list up or put kit together.
Yeah, they didn't tell us where the specific camp area was going to be, but when they sent the plane ticket, you're like, oh, okay, I'm going to this part of Alaska. And then you knew about 4 days before you caught the flight where you were going. So I jumped on the computer and I'm looking at like Gaia and all the different mapping apps to try to see the terrain. Um, but they didn't give you like a specific gear list,
Okay.
only how much of what you can bring.
I was going to say
Like
that's the next question. It's like you don't turn up with bags or anything like that. So is it stuff you can carry, or are there any sort of things you're not allowed to take on your person?
we weren't allowed to take any kind of gear.
Okay.
So yeah, no like compasses, knives, hatchets, any of that we weren't allowed to bring. It was literally just clothing.
Okay.
So we were able to have a couple layers of thermal underwears, regular underwears, a couple pairs of socks. So it was very vague. Um, a pair of pants, a jacket, a winter jacket, a couple of undershirts. So at least we had a little bit of a guideline to follow, but it was up to your discretion as to, well, do you want to wear wool? Do you want cotton? Do you want polyester? And obviously, being an outdoor person, cotton kills. You don't want to wear cotton out there
Yeah, yeah,
because
yeah,
if it gets wet,
100%.
it will never dry. Um, but I think for the most part, everybody was pretty dialed in to what was needed to last out there. Because everybody that went through the casting process and got picked did have skill levels to some extent. I mean, all of our levels varied. for me, I'm not a hunter. I fish and I forage and I'm a through hiker. I go backpacking in the mountains for weeks on end. But then you have the guys that's all they do is go hunting,
Yeah.
or that's all they do is go fishing. Or you have, other people that they know stuff, but they haven't really gone out and applied those skills. So you have a
Okay.
very wide range of who's going to be out there, which I think, makes it work because you are forced to depend on one another and bounce off of each other's skill sets to really work together as a team, or it'll drive you
100%.
nuts.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. You either it either works or it doesn't. And to be
Mhm.
honest, it seemed there was nobody really that was sort of playing a bad game in the end of the day. Everybody seemed to be quite honest and fair. I think, all right, there was one or two that they disappeared
Mhm.
early on in the show, but actually everybody compared to season one, you were a much more. They obviously when they did the casting, they chose people that had sort of a few morals. Let's just say that.
Yeah, the first season was it was interesting, to say the least. I
Yeah.
mean, you've obviously watched it. But yeah, I think this season they definitely took a little bit more care and consideration as to I don't want to say the type of person they casted, but they wanted more people that would probably stick together and not stab somebody in the back.
Yeah, I think so. You never know. Season three might be completely different again. It might be a totally different wild ride of a show. But this
Yeah.
one actually, it was really nice to watch. Yeah, we sat down over a couple of nights and kind of binge watched it. And my wife was talking. I'm like, the girl in the yellow hat. That's the one I'm talking to. Oh, okay. And still, and it was just you felt for it, especially that last sort of your last part, that walk. I'm
Mm.
there going, yeah, I know how he's doing that. He's just using the tree moss, and that's it. That only grows on the north side. That's why he's going north, and he's not doesn't need a compass. But it's like, oh, yeah, he's killing his team though because he's just storming off, and that's it.
Yeah, and that was really hard for me. I mean, the world watched physically, yeah, it was definitely very emotional. For me, I pride myself in being a very, very active individual, and I felt great up until about halfway through that trek, and then my body just hit a brick wall, and it was that internal battle between my mind and my body. My mind was like, "Go, go, go," and my body was like, Nope, wait a minute, I'm not going anywhere." And that was
Yeah.
that was tough. That was really tough. And yeah, Brendan was just like, Let's go. I know where we talked about different routes after we saw the map, like, well, do we want to follow the path or do we want to veer off a little bit? Um, and there was some bickering going on too about which way to go and what path to take. And then at that one point, Brendan was like, you know what? Because we were arguing a little bit about which way to go in that moment, and he got tired of it. He's like, "We're wasting time. Let's just go." And he just beelined and went, and that was a great shortcut to go. But at the other end, it made some suffering because
I was going to
it
say it.
was
Yeah, you
yeah,
must have
it
had
was a harder way.
a fair climb and an ascent to go up to go down, and if you are low on energy, that's just going to be an absolute killer. And as you
Mhm.
say, you could see you'd hit a brick wall. You soldiered on, but it was like you could see everybody on your team was like, this is it. We're done kind of thing.
Yeah, it was very tough. And I didn't think about flaring out. Nobody thought about voting me off. I think for all of us, we were just in the mind state of we just got to get to the end. We got to finish. We got to get there. We had no idea how far along the other team was. Um, we just knew we had to go, and I felt really bad, and I still carry part of that guilt with me as to the way things ended up because I do feel partially responsible for how things ended. And I had a very nice conversation with Brendan the other day about it. And he's like, honestly, Tina, he's like, I'm so proud of you. Every time we talk, he's like, I'm so proud of you. I'm so proud of you. And he's like, don't even say that you should have flared out because even if you brought that up, he's like, I wouldn't have given you the flare gun. I
Yeah.
wouldn't have allowed you to do it. And he's like, and
You could see that in the edit anyway, because all of a sudden
yeah.
he's at the front, and the next thing he's there, literally going, "Just hang on to me, and we'll walk this out together." You could almost see it was I don't that just the way they filmed it, but obviously it actually
Mhm.
happened where he suddenly realizes like, "I'm going to get you to the end, whatever happens, but we're going to get there."
Mhm. Yeah, and that was amazing. Absolutely. Just the camaraderie that we had as a team throughout the whole thing, and then at the very end, just not having them give up on me, knowing how much it meant to me, knowing that it could possibly sacrifice their wins and their needs just to get me to the end. I'm 100% grateful for each and every one of them, for not giving up on me. And
But
I
yeah,
told all
yeah.
I told all of them, I said, there was everything that could possibly go wrong that day went wrong. So it wasn't 100% my fault. Um, but I still hang on to that because I still blame myself for that. And I'm like, one of these days I'm going to pay it forward. And if something happens, I win the lottery or something happens, I'm taking all you guys with me because you didn't leave me behind there, and I'm not going to leave you guys behind.
But I suppose that's the best part when you look at it, is that's the key with any outdoor stuff. Even I teach the scouts how to go and do their hiking and stuff like that, and it's that whole thing as you, if you work as a team, you walk at the pace of the slowest at the back and you keep them moving, and and that's how it works. And if you've got a good team, which
Mhm.
you obviously had, you get to the end together. There's no point in being this, oh well, we'll just leave them and crack on, because actually you're
Mhm.
not a team at that point, are you?
No, not at all. And with social media, I've been getting I was pretty safe the first 6 episodes, from the trolling because unfortunately a lot of the stuff that I did didn't get highlighted. I was just kind of there coasting under the radar, which I guess is good in its own aspect, but on the other part, it's like, I did so much cool stuff out there. Come on, I made a cot. I was the only one that actually made a bed off the ground with some
Okay.
alder poles and some pine boughs. Eric actually helped me cut the pieces because we were sharing the one hatchet. But like that was never shown. I'm like, oh man, like I actually could do stuff, people, but yeah, nobody, the world watching didn't know what I was capable of. We got a taste of it towards the end. Um, but yeah, the last 2 episodes, hadn't even watched them yet. I was waiting for family to get home and watch them later on in the evening, and I woke up that morning to a laundry list of hate mails,
I was going to
from
say,
people.
what social, let's talk about obviously that
Yeah.
and social media. So you've already started getting some trolls firing hate mail at you and stuff like that.
Yes. Like I said, the first 6 episodes, I was pretty safe from it. Nobody said anything because nobody knew me. But after the final 2 episodes, I had quite a bit of people either attacking my Instagram page just on different posts so everybody could see it publicly, or some sending me direct messages. And the one that really kind of got under my skin was this one guy. I woke up the morning of the premiere or the finale, hadn't even watched the episodes yet, and this guy was just like, "You're a loser. You should never apply for another survival show ever. How does it feel to lose $200,000 for each of your teammates? Oh, and by the way, your mom has dementia." It's like, why do you even have to throw that in there? You're fair to have your opinion, but attacking my family now too is pretty low. And there were other ones too that said I should have tapped out. I was selfish. I drug everybody down. Several others were just attacking my skills or lack thereof. Like, you didn't even do anything but cause your team to lose. And then people were even attacking me on my looks. They're like, "Oh, you're a model. That's laughable. You have a big nose. You have a bird nose. You have very weird features." One guy told me I look like a crossdresser and a drag queen. And I'm not used to getting a lot of attention, especially negative attention.
Yeah.
So it did kind of get under my skin a little bit, especially the comment about my mom. And I ended up leaving the house. I told my husband, I'm like, I just got to get out of here. I can't sit here and stew. So I went and hiked up a mountain in Malibu and sat there for 5 hours and just had like a good cry and just cleared my head. um, and then the more I thought about it and talked to friends and family and several people from season one, I've been talking to them as well. And they're like, you know what? You're better than that. Nobody really knows what you went through out there. It's
Yeah.
easy for somebody at home getting a full night's sleep, belly's full, so, hydrated, to pick you apart and say they could have done better or you didn't do enough. They're like, just don't let it get to you. And it is hard, because it still stings, but I think after about a week of it, I just learned to block and delete, hide comments, not engage, and just think, okay, well, these people just have nothing better to do than find somebody and find something about them to tear them down because they're miserable in their own lives. So they're
Yeah.
projecting that negativity onto somebody else. Um, so that's been very interesting and kind of difficult to navigate through. And then last night, I keep getting these Google security alerts that somebody's trying to hack into my Gmail. And I'm like, what? What is going on? Like, why? And I guess to be fair, my Gmail is my name, so it is very easy for somebody to find. But I'm like, oh my God, this is new territory for me too. So I had to go around at like 11 o'clock last night, changing all of my passwords. And I'm like, this is crazy. This is insane.
Yeah, but this is it now. You, as I say, you're now you've been on Netflix. You'll probably be on the runs for however many years, and all of a sudden there will be these people that yeah, that know everything. They can sit behind a screen and they can be the loudest and the strongest, but actually probably in real life when you confront them, they have no voice. And but yet
Hmm.
they will fire abuse at you and tell you that you did everything wrong. And yeah, it's really sad, and I think they'll probably pick on you more because you're female.
Hmm. Oh, absolutely. And I would say, at least from the comments that I've been getting, it's been about 60-40. So about 60% have been male that have
Okay.
been knocking me down, and then about 40% have been women. I do try to ignore it all. There was this one woman, there's a fan page on Facebook, and I've been staying under the radar. I've been reading some of the comments, but there's this one woman in particular that's constantly, I don't know why, but she always chimes in and like has to put me down. And one of the biggest comments that she made was, I should have gained more weight. I should have bulked up to have more energy. And after letting it go for about a week of her just constantly bringing that up, I reached out and I just said, you try gaining 20 pounds in 3 weeks and see how you feel, especially if you're not used to eating like that. It's not easy. I mean, the average person can't gain muscle and weight in that short period of time. And it did shut her. She's like, oh, I didn't think about that. And so sometimes it just really takes explaining the facts to somebody for them to realize that, oh, yeah, I guess that is how biology works. I guess that is how things
Yeah.
go.
It's a really
Um,
tricky one because I think that's the thing. A lot of these shows, as we've touched on other shows there, and you've got a load of the British shows as well. People don't realise that it's a very quick turnaround normally, and they want you to get straight out there and get on with it. And exactly as you
mhm,
said, you can't just go and stuff yourself with McDonald's and loads of chocolate and go, I've got all this fat and I'm going to be okay. It doesn't work like that because the body just goes,
mm-mm,
hang on a minute, I've got nowhere to store this to start with. It's just I'm just going to make it go through you, and you're not going to feel great. So
mhm,
but trying to explain that to, I think, the general public who've never done it or never faced that is so difficult. And of course, the way the shows are sensationalized and the way that the edit is always makes out it looks very different to what the actual real reality of being there is all about.
mhm. Oh, absolutely. And then on the flip side with the negative, I have been getting a lot of positive, which is amazing. And I think for every negative, I have at least a dozen positives.
That's
So
cool.
that is an amazing thing. I've had a lot of people, men and women too, reach out to me and say that I'm such an inspiration. A couple women said they hope that their daughter grows up to be like me. You're giving women an amazing name to show perseverance and always hanging in there and getting through. And so that's been very humbling, extremely humbling. I've tried to I always try to reach back to people who reach out to me, and it's getting more difficult. I mean, I'm very grateful, I guess, for the celebrity, and it's weird for me to even say that because I've always just been kind of coasting along.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, but it is getting more difficult to try to reach back to people and thank them for their kind words. Um, and a few people that I have interacted with, they've been super shocked, like, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe that you had the time to get back to me. This is amazing. I can't believe that I'm talking to you." And I'm like, "That's great, guys, but I'm just a normal person. Like, I'm just a
Yeah.
regular person like you are." But again, yeah, it's very, very humbling. And it is nice to know because part of the reason that I did go on the show was to become a role model or just bring awareness to women in the outdoors. So to see, even though I didn't get the ending that I wanted, um, to see at least that aspect of it come to fruition. Yeah, that we're tough, we can hang, and it might not be easy at all, but we can still make it. We can still survive, get to the end, not give up.
But in
Um,
some ways, your ending is actually shows determination and grit. And it's one of
yeah.
those, it might not have been, you didn't get the cash prize, but I would say that the as a group of people and as for society to see, it's like you've got these five people. Well, it started off with four, you've gained a fifth. It just goes to show that you can come from all walks of life, work together, perseverance, and get to the end, and still be a team is what
Mhm.
society actually needs. Whereas it nowadays, most people they would strike, they'd walk all over you if there was a chance to get into that cash pot. But you guys
Mhm.
showed it as it didn't matter that one person was slowing the team down, you still carried on. And I think if anything comes from this, that's probably the best part of it is it's the teamwork and the camaraderie that's really pushed you forward.
Oh, absolutely. And like you mentioned, I mean, society as a whole needs that right now.
Yeah.
And that is a lot of the comments that have been coming in too. Like, thank you for showing us that there's still a humanity. Thank you for showing us that people out there do care about one another because there's not enough of that. People are so quick to judge. People are so quick to throw you under the bus if it'll save them. And that's a shame. It really is heartbreaking to see us as a society kind of go in the direction of it's just me against the world, and I don't care who I have to set on fire to get to where I need to go.
But I think we've touched on that. You're on social media, your presence is growing and stuff like that. And I think people that you've spoken to exactly that. People think they see on social media that you're there and you're the person and
Mhm,
they send you a message. And 90% of the time your message, what people don't understand is that you're probably getting maybe a few hundred messages a day, and some of those will be
mhm,
going into the place where you can see them, or the general, or the message requests. And as well as that, you've got thousands of random spam that comes in. Now I sit there and you do feed through it, but sometimes you just can't feed through everything that's there, and it is virtually, it'll get worse as your numbers of followers grows, I suppose, won't
mhm.
it?
Yeah, it's probably tripled in the last few weeks since the show's aired, which is crazy, and every day I wake up to about 50 more followers, and I'm just like, "Okay," and I'm trying to navigate through all of the messages and the comments, and yeah, it's very, very difficult, and so every now and again, I'll try to make a post on the stories like, "Hey, I hear you, I see you, I'm not ignoring you, I appreciate your kind words, and just know if I don't have the time to get back to you personally, that I really do appreciate everything that you have to say." Because it is hard, and in the beginning, I was kind of beating myself up about it because I am a very personable person, and I do respect and appreciate others' time. But I'm like, I'm going to be sitting here for hours if I take the time to go and thank everybody individually. And I can't because then that takes away from the time that I have doing stuff for my mom um, or other things that I need to get done. And
Well,
it's
there is a real life outside of social media, isn't there, at the end of the day?
there is, yep, and I kinda walked away from it because, last week I was in Hawaii, in January, the family, we made the decision to start fulfilling some of my mom's bucket list, and she had said years ago that she always wanted to see Hawaii before she died, and so we pulled together and like, "Well, credit cards can be paid off later, we'll just make it happen," because memories with her are on a very strict timeline now, and we
100%.
knew that if we were gonna make it happen, we gotta make it happen however we could now. And so we did, and it was an amazing trip, and there were moments where she forgot where we were, but that's comes with the territory, but the moments where she was like, "This is amazing, this is beautiful," like, even this morning, she was like, "It was so beautiful, I'm so glad that we got to go, I wish we could go back." So she was retaining some of those memories, which is just that's what it's about. But while I was out there, I'm like, I can't be on social media. I'll filter through a little bit, but this is for her. I can't be on my phone. Like, this is for her. And that was kind of hard too, because I think you and I had missed a couple messages as well. And I'm like, oh, I can't forget this and I can't forget that. And then like you lose track. It's weird. It's so weird.
Well, and unfortunately, I think that's it. You're just going to you've got to ride the storm out. And I think as speaking to others, it's, yeah, you'll have this wave now of people that suddenly start watching it, and or everybody will think they know you because they've watched you on TV.
I did meet my first fan, while I was in
Right.
Hawaii. So with my mom, she's not a very mobile person, but my husband and I are super active. We're like, well, we can't be in Hawaii and like not go to at least a couple of trails. So we would wake up before sunrise, hit the trail by 5:30 in the morning, and then be back at the condo with my mom like right around when she's waking up, like at 9 o'clock. So we went, we did the trail, we're coming back to the car, we're packing our gear away, and there's this group of college students that walk by us, and all of a sudden, there's this one girl, she's eating a banana, and she does like a double take, and she like stops in her tracks, like, and turns around, and she's like, "Oh my God, were you on a survival show?" And she gets so excited, and I'm like, yeah, she's like, oh, and she throws her hands up, her banana went flying. I'm just like, oh my gosh, this is hilarious. She comes up, gives me a huge hug, and she's like, you're such a badass. You're such an inspiration. She's like, I can't believe that I'm meeting you. She's like, can I take a photo and a video with you? And I'm like, yeah, absolutely. And she was telling all of her friends because they hadn't watched the show, like what I did and what the show is about. And she's like, you're so hardcore. She's like, how? And she's like, what? How is this trail? Like, are we gonna be able to do it? And I'm like, oh yeah, it's very simple. But it was just that moment was so amazing. It was very surreal. But it was cool too because it's like I'm seeing like in real time what my accomplishment on the show is doing for other people. To have her, it's not even about getting recognition. It's about people seeing what I did and what that meant to them,
That's
which
cool.
was
Yeah.
really, really cool.
And I think that's the nice way of having it, because at least that way people can relate as well, that they'll be able to go, actually, yeah, I can see where this lady's come from, or these guys have come from, and they can just look at it and go, yeah, this is cool, we can do that. And it gives people hopefully that little bit of motivation to go, actually, yeah, doesn't matter which walk of life you come from. Look, this lass is a model, and she's made it through a survival thing and got to the end of it. They don't know that you can walk up a hill and all the rest, and you've done all that training, but they look at social media and says, oh, she's at a photo shoot, she's doing this, she's doing that. But yeah, you're badass, you've been on a survival show.
Yeah, yeah, thank you.
But it's good, and it's, I think, I like these shows are great. If there was a bit more editing of how we saw a bit more of the things you were doing behind the scenes and all the rest of
Mhm.
it, it would be great. You almost need to go back to Netflix and say, right, now they do another documentary that doesn't have to be shown at sort of prime time, but just put all the good stuff out there, like the blooper reel kind of thing.
Oh, absolutely, and we were all like, all of us, all because the whole cast is on a group chat on Instagram as well,
Okay.
and after the finale aired, we were all jumping on there saying, "Well, wait a minute," because it's not just myself or Team Delta. I mean, everybody has stories that they were trying to tell that weren't shown because again,
Yeah.
there's thousands of hours of footage, and you got to tweak it down to a very tiny bit amount of a little bit. Um, but we were even trying to like reach out to Netflix. I'm like, yeah, can we do like maybe an unedited version or a director's cut or something that showcases a lot of the stuff that we did do out there, between the skills and some of the funny moments or the heartfelt moments, because we all have these grandiose stories of really great things that happened out there that nobody will ever know except for us. And maybe that makes it a little special too. But a lot of the feedback that we have been getting from the fans is we wanna see the skills. Like, alone is great because you can learn from that.
Yes. Yeah.
It's a teaching tool, but for Outlast, it's more drama based, which I guess is what makes the show separated from all the other survival type shows. But on the other hand, it's like I think there could be a nicer marriage between the two of showcasing what you can do and how you do it so that the average person can be like, oh, okay. And maybe that sparks some interest in them to learn that skill and get more
100%.
immersed in the outdoors instead of watching a bunch of people bicker. Um, but we
It,
tried.
I suppose,
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of one of those things. What you need to do is say, can we buy the footage now and do our own like YouTube channel? And well, that's the other option. You all now diverge off on your own routes, and YouTube comes up, and you put your survival skills on. I'm not backcountry. I'm not in Alaska, but here you go. This is what I did to start a fire, or do this, or do that.
Oh, and the wheels are definitely turning for that. Absolutely. We were all even hoping to try to do organize our own reunion.
Cool.
Even if Netflix doesn't want to be involved, they haven't really said no. I think it's more so because for them, if we all would decide, okay, we're going to go meet up in Colorado and go camping for a week, they can't really say no because it's not on their dime.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah.
it's no different than 3 or 4 people who have already met, have gone out and met, to do that. But we were trying to hope that maybe they would send out a crew and film something, documentary style about all of us getting together. And they're like, nope, nope, nope.
Oh,
But we're trying to make something happen, just on our own dimes to
you'll
go out
just
and
have
get
to have a
together.
load of GoPros, a couple of drones. That's it. Just film it from all angles and find a video editor that'll just put it all together for you, and that's it. Job done.
Yep, absolutely.
But
Nothing's impossible.
sometimes those are the best type of I know I've been followed around the hill a few times by different people on different journeys and getting things recorded, and it's just you sit there and you're like, oh look, I'm being videoed, and then somebody sends you a picture. It's like, you're on YouTube again. I've just found your video. It's like, well, it's nothing to do with me this time.
Yeah.
I know that's really cool. But would you, if so, the $1 million question is, would you do it again?
Oh, absolutely, without hesitation, 100%. I even said in my final interview, which again, things got shaved down, but I said, I have unfinished business with Alaska. I I didn't achieve 100% what I wanted to achieve, and I will go back in a heartbeat. So we'll see. I mean, maybe the opportunity will come up, maybe it won't, but either way, I'm getting my butt back up there.
Fantastic. No, because it's a beautiful, wonderful place,
Oh
isn't it?
yeah,
Really.
it's
Um,
amazing.
and I suppose there's bits again. You different shows show different the areas of the landscape and all the rest of it. But yeah, where you probably were was probably amazing. The sunrises and the sunsets were fantastic. Just all of those things that won't have been aired. But yeah, really, you'll have memories for life. And the thing is, none of you will have had a smartphone there to take a picture of it or anything like that.
We didn't. Well, and I'm a nature photographer as well. So every time I go up in the mountains, I take my camera with me and the different lenses. And there were so many moments where I'm like, "Ah, wish I had my camera. Oh, damn, I wish I had that lens." Like so many moments. And so it's another reason why I got to go back because,
So now it's a camping
you know,
adventure back to that spot. So just a quick, so do the cast, the crew then have to go in where you've had your camps and return the landscape back to basically as if you weren't there afterwards?
I would imagine so. So we never, once we left for that final trek,
Yep.
we packed everything up and we were gone. We never returned back to the camp.
Okay.
So we don't know how they removed everything, but I would imagine that they would have a crew come back out there and return everything to its natural state because it is a preserve. It's a
Yeah,
natural
yeah, yeah.
preserve. So the leave no trace policy, I'm sure, would
I was
be
going to say,
very
with
strict.
helicopters dropping in pallets of stuff and all the rest of it, it's like somebody's got to go in there and tidy it up afterwards.
Hmm.
Fantastic. Well, look, I know you're a busy person, and I'm not gonna hold you up for too much longer. But thank you ever so much for coming on and talking about everything you've done.
Oh, you're very welcome. It was my pleasure. It's been such a treat. I love talking about it. So
Well,
I've enjoyed every moment of it.
we'll hopefully everybody can watch what's going on and follow you on socials. I'll put all the links up to that, and
Thank you.
they can go and watch the show. And then now that we've had a bit more of an in-depth interview, they'll hopefully find a bit more out about you.
Yeah, hopefully.
So, is there anything else that we've missed or you want to cover, or that I've not asked you?
Um, no,
I
think
think we
everything's
covered.
great.
I
A
think we got
lot,
everything
yeah,
there. Yeah, yeah,
absolutely.
magic. Well, thank you ever so much, and well, I think we'll draw it to a close there.
All right, thank you.
If anybody's like me and enjoys watching these outdoor shows, you always feel with our knowledge of the outdoors and the countryside, we'd always do really well on them. It's something that I actually fancy having a go at some point. If there's anybody listening that's casting for this, I would quite happily go and throw myself into the Alaskan wilderness. I think there was, I don't think they've done a British version of Outlast. I know they did a British version of Alone. It was quite interesting watching how the Brits coped compared to the Americans that have all been on it. I think the American seasons got up to about season 10. I think the British one only needed one season. Us Brits didn't seem to cope well with the wilderness and the wild animals. But it would be really interesting to have a go at. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed that. I'm going to wish you all a very Merry Christmas if you are listening to this with only the few days to go. Hopefully you have an absolutely fantastic time. And we will see you probably in the new year with another podcast. Thank you very much.